Hello, and welcome to today's Safety Daily Advisor webcast, brought to you by EnPro Learning System. Today's program is entitled Building a Behavior-Based Safety Program by Establishing Safety as a Core Value. This is a 60-minute program. Before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed, or if we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. We do capture all questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available in the Resource List widget that looks like a green folder at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately one day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. Your speaker today is Mr. Jonathan Neubauer. Jonathan Neubauer, CSP, is the Director of Safety and Organizational Change for EnPro Learning System. And now, a big welcome to Jonathan.
Hello, thank you for joining the webinar today. This afternoon, we're going to be discussing behavior-based safety and the importance of approaching BBS programs through establishment of safety as a core value of the business. We'll also spend some time discussing some of the finer details regarding implementation of a behavior-based safety program. But before I begin, I think it would be worthwhile to give a little background on EnPro Learning Systems and EnPro Industries. EnPro Industries is a worldwide manufacturer of highly engineered products. Our companies are comprised of what I would refer to as medium to heavy-duty manufacturing, and we face the safety challenges of businesses operating in that area. We manufacture products ranging from small rubber gaskets and seals up to large diesel engines for naval ships and backup power generation. We bend, twist, grind metal every day, and we have some extremely hazardous operations such as foundries throughout the business. And yet we are able to still send our employees home safe each and every day. Over the past several years, EnPro has established a strong culture of safety through our businesses, which has led us to be twice named as one of America's safest companies. Through our progression and transformation, we have also had the opportunity to work with businesses outside of EnPro, and we have offered assistance and guidances to those organizations. It is through that work that led to the creation of EnPro Learning System, our external consulting service focusing on safety leadership and safety cultural change and organizational change. To begin with, if we start by focusing on the formal definition of behavioral-based safety, we see that it is the application of science of behavioral change to real-world problems, or a process that creates a safety partnership between management and employees that continually focuses people's attention and actions on theirs and others' daily safety behavior. Behavior-based safety is not a new concept. In fact, the beginnings of BBS can be traced back into the 30s and 40s when H.W. Heinrich began his studies of work-related injury reports. And many of you have likely seen this triangle or this image in the past, and most likely understand the theory and data behind it. Back in the 30s, H.W. Heinrich began to analyze supervisor incident reports, and he concluded that for every major injury, there were 29 minor injuries that had taken place, and approximately 300 near misses had also taken place. From that data, he also concluded that approximately 88% of all accidents were caused by unsafe acts, 10% were caused by equipment or conditions, and 2% were unavoidable. Based upon that information, employees soon began to focus on elimination of the 88% of injuries that were quote-unquote caused by human behavior. Over the years, a great amount of additional work and several studies have been performed, and many have resulted in similar results to the percentages that Heinrich developed, and some others have challenged the thought process altogether. Regardless of the percentages of the injuries caused by our own personal behavior, it is clear to see that each and every one of us and our behavior has an impact on safety in the workplace and our safety outside of the workplace. In order to reach perfection, a zero-injury state within your place of business, we have to focus on behavioral safety in addition to the physical hazards in the workplace. So what does behavioral-based safety mean to me? To me, behavioral-based safety is the practice of looking within myself, taking a look at why safety is important to me and to those around me, from a personal perspective, informing the value of safety. By understanding why I choose to be safe and why I want others to be safe, I begin to create a core value of safety within myself. And by development of that core value, I am then able to focus on habits of safety excellence that will lead to safe behavior. Behavior-based safety is not a cure-all program or system. If you are attempting to change performance by focusing on employee behaviors without focusing on your safety program as a whole, the program is bound to fail. When we think about behavioral-based safety, it is part of a comprehensive environmental health and safety or safety management plan, not a standalone fix. It is for these reasons that we focus on other areas of need before implementing a behavior-based safety program within our own businesses. As you can see on the plan on the slide in front of you, we start with management commitment and holding ourselves accountable. We instill basic programs that are vital to a successful safety plan, and then we focus on our safety leadership. This is not focusing only on our leaders of the business, but also the safety leadership ability of all of our employees. Each and every one of us are safety leaders, and we have the ability to influence those around us. After we've ensured that our managers are committed, our employees are cared for in the event of an incident, and our ethic regarding leading safety has been developed, now we begin to focus on empowering the workforce and engaging them in the safety plan. It is through this engagement and the formation of committee-based safety teams that employees get to have a voice in the program and are empowered to take action to make their workplace safer. Without addressing these physical needs and without empowering the workforce to take action first, a behavior-based safety program is likely to be met with a great deal of resistance. It is only after the cultural transformation that we begin to look at behavior-based safety. When we do that, we start with performing a gap analysis and a perception survey in order to get a deeper understanding of the culture at the site. And when we're ready, we can move forward with implementation of the program through training and education, moving a short while later into the observation process. Throughout this entire process, we do not lose sight of the overall plan, and we continue on with the additional program pieces that help support and sustain culture that you see on this slide. Nothing that you see here is really anything new, I am sure. Many of you have seen this same sort of information in the past. But I think within EnPro Industries and ELS, the focus on a complete, unwavering focus on this plan and just an all-out intensity for implementation of these programs is what makes us successful. So within EnPro Learning Systems, we look at behavior-based safety as having 4 critical components: culture, leadership, value, and habits of excellence are all critical for a successful behavior-based safety program. We already discussed culture a little bit, but let's explore it a bit further. Edgar Schein wrote that there are 3 distinctive levels of organizational culture. There are the artifacts, which are the tangible or verbally identifiable elements of an organization. These could be things like the design of a building, furniture, dress code of the workforce, etc. The second element is espoused values. These are the organization's stated values and rules of behavior. EnPro's values are safety, excellence, and respect. Safety is said first, it always comes first, and is directly tied to respect. We cannot say that we respect our employees if we cannot provide them a safe place to come to work each and every day. And we strive for excellence in everything that we do. Our vision is to have the world's safest employees both at work and at home. The last element, according to Schein, is shared basic assumptions. These are the deeply embedded, taken for granted behaviors which we are typically unconscious of, but make up the very being of the culture. This last element is extremely important. Schein wrote in his book, Organizational Culture and Leadership, that basic assumptions have become so taken for granted that one finds little variation within a cultural unit. In fact, if a basic assumption, such as, we will not perform any unsafe work, is strongly held within a group, members will find behavior based on any other premise inconceivable. Establishing a culture that has clearly established values, basic assumptions, and strong environmental health and safety or safety management program is a vital piece of the behavioral-based safety puzzle. This should be performed, in our opinion, before beginning implementation of a formal BBS program. Leadership is the second component. Without strong safety leadership and commitment, any program is doomed to fail. We will not go into depth into safety leadership during this webinar, but in his book, The Fifth Discipline, Peter Senge discussed how new insights fail to get put into practice because they conflict with deeply held internal images of how the world works, images that limit us to familiar ways of thinking and acting. The familiar way of thinking and acting within typical business and culture is to make the customer happy and to do it by any means possible. Therefore, even if a leader within the business knows that the safety of their workforce isn't the espoused value of the business, he or she may still fail to act in line with those values due to their mental model of what their priorities should be. Taking the time to work with all employees to recognize internally the value that they place on safety and working with your leaders to show them how to properly lead safety is essential. I tend to look at safety leadership in the progression shown on this slide. There are 4 basic levels of safety leadership, ranging from the compliance-oriented leader, only doing things because somebody tells us that we have to, all the way up to the visionary leader. The visionary leader actively seeks out and learns new ways of thinking, new methods for implementing successful safety programs, those ones that think outside of the box. I'm sure that we've all worked with leaders at each stage of this progression throughout our experiences and careers. It's important for each of us to recognize where we are in this progression so that we can strive to improve. If we or our leadership are stuck in the support or compliance level, we will never be able to create a culture and system that leads to zero injury. See a quick poll question that popped up here. See if we can get some answers to that before we move on to the next slide. But where are you or your organization on the safety leadership progression level? Again, we have the compliance level. We're doing things because somebody tells us to, whether that be OSHA or a company standard. We have the supporter, somebody who knows it's the right thing to do, and they'll help support the program, but they're not leading it. You have the champion level, where we have obviously a clear recognition of the need of the safety programs. We have a clear commitment to the programs. They're an advocate who actively lead and participate and model the way. And then lastly, we have the visionary. And again, just to sum up what I said a moment ago, these are the folks that are seeking out new information, creatively thinking of different ways to engage the workforce and implement a program. So let's give a couple more seconds for that poll to be answered. We'll move on. Okay. And here's the results that we see coming in from the group. So a large majority there in the champion level, 37%, supporter at 26, visionary at 19, and compliance at 17. And again, this isn't a means for us to track where everybody's at, but really for you guys to recognize whereabouts you're at and where your leadership team is at. So that way we can begin to have the discussions of how we progress up. How do we change our way of thinking? How do we change the perception? How do we change our actions to show our workforce that safety is a core value of our business and we're leading it the right way? Okay. The next element is establishing safety as a core value of the business. This is already discussed as part of culture, but we're going to go a step further. Establishing safety as a core value of the business and within ourselves is essential in initial implementation as well as long-term sustainability of the program. This comes about through the cultivation of the culture and strong leadership guiding the way. I often hear the statement that safety is our top priority, but in my mind, priorities change based on circumstances. Values do not. For example, what do you do when your alarm clock goes off in the morning? I've asked this question in several training classes, and I often get responses such as you get out of bed, you take a shower, brush your teeth, let the dogs out, get the kids ready for school, put some clothes on. Those aren't in any particular order. But now what happens if you're woken up at 3 a.m. with your smoke detector going off? Now what do you focus on? You focus on getting your loved ones out of the house, your kids, your pets, maybe grab the photo album if it's right by the door on your way out. Why did our actions change? and it was based on the circumstances. Our priorities that we typically have in the morning shifted based on the circumstances that we faced. But those things that we value, they never change. In fact, if anything, you hold on to those even greater in circumstances such as that, in times of distress or emergency or difficult situation. We tend to cling to those values even more. The last critical component is habits of excellence. A habit is a routine of behavior that is repeated regularly and tends to occur unconsciously. When we speak of habits of excellence, we are speaking about those that are disciplined and trained conditioning that shapes our responses and behaviors to external stimuli. Our internal behavior-based safety program, Safety First, that was internally developed within EnPro Industries, is built on the premise of influencing habits. Our triggers are focused on affecting the habits of our employees so that over the course of a short period of time, we can create habits of excellence that will lead to safe behaviors. We begin by making the connection with everyone. We utilize the acronym CARES to communicate our general behaviors. Safety First, CARES. CARES stands for control emotions, anticipate, responsible, engage, and safe pace. The general behaviors that we want to affect within our businesses fall into these primary categories. We need to control our emotions, anticipate what could happen and prepare ourselves, be personally responsible for our safety and our actions and those of the individuals around us. We have to remain engaged in the task or operation at hand and be focused on our work. And lastly, we need to work at a safe pace, appropriate for the person and for the job. After we discuss the general behaviors that can lead us to unsafe acts, the next module focuses on understanding our current state. As a class, we discuss current performance, current trends, root cause analysis, and injury classifications. This is the module where we educate everyone on the happenings within the business to help create the link that behavior does have an impact on safety at work and at home. Based on the discussions in Module 2, we then focus our attention on the specific triggers that will impact our specific challenges. As I mentioned earlier, our businesses vary greatly from location to location. So we needed to have a program that was customizable and specific to each and every one of those businesses. So, for example, lacerations are a high hazard within some of our manufacturing environments. So we utilize the trigger, don't feel the steel. This is a quick and easy way to remember that anytime we are working with metal or with cutting tools, we need to protect ourselves through engineering controls, hand tools, PPE, whatever that corrective action may be. But that mental trigger is always there. If for any reason I touch a knife, I touch a piece of steel, I touch a product without proper PPE, without the proper tools, that trigger is there to help me refocus on the unsafe act I'm about to take and lead me to take change course of action and go about it the correct way with the appropriate tool or equipment. The adoption of this specific trigger led to a 78% decrease in lacerations in about an 18-month period of time within our businesses. Safety First has numerous triggers to choose from, and each operation picks those triggers that impact them and their specific challenges within the business. In addition, as part of the training, each and every class is challenged to come up with their own trigger to focus on the challenges that were identified in Module 2. The facility can then adopt those internally identified triggers and implement them as part of the overall program. For example, at one of our businesses we recently acquired, they had a very high rate of injuries from flash burns from welding. So as they went through the organizational change and the cultural change, we got to a point where we were ready to roll out behavioral-based safety. And after learning about the injuries that they sustained and the incidents that were going on within their workplace, they came up with a trigger, don't stare at the glare, specific to their welding operations that would help make sure that every employee knew that if they ever saw weld glare, they need to have the appropriate PPE on, put the appropriate barrier in place, and it was something that the employees helped create so they were in a much better situation, much better position to make sure that they follow the safe work practices. The last module of our program is caring, sharing, and learning. This is where we teach everyone how to engage with one another, how to give and receive feedback, which is extremely important when we get to the observation part of the behavioral-based safety program. If people don't know how to talk with one another or how to have a professional, caring conversation with one another, the program's going to suffer for it. So this is the area where we really spend a lot of time focusing on how to interact with one another, how to have those conversations, how to give constructive feedback, and cementing that personal commitment to safety and the core value of safety. I thought I'd share a little bit about our progression. Early on in our progression, EnPro Industries implemented an off-the-shelf behavior-based safety program. There's several out there. We purchased one and we implemented it. And the program focused initially on training for all employees and on observations as well. Those observations were set up to be performed by management and safety committee members at our various sites across the globe. At this stage of our progression, EnPro had the beginnings of our culture created, but work still needed to happen in this area. If you think back to that progression slide, we were probably in the more the support or going on champion level, but certainly not to a visionary level at this stage. We spoke about the importance of safety and of safety as a priority, but we had yet to progress into creation of safety as a core value. We also were focused on the implementation of outdated BBS programs that simply did not focus on culture, value, and habits of excellence. And after some initial gains, we rather quickly began to see the program fail. Anytime you research behavioral-based safety, you will see some of these same statements, but we soon began to hear the observations were simply being done to meet the metric, to meet the goals, that employees were blamed for all accidents, and that we were focusing all of our efforts on identifying unsafe acts and behaviors without focusing on the very real equipment and process hazards that remain within our business. A quick example, early in my career I was involved in reviewing an incident in which an operator had reached into a machine to try and activate a defective sensor. The employees in this area were all well aware that the sensor was defective and was broken, and they had reported the issue several times. However, the sensor was never replaced, and that led our employees to coming up with a solution of their own. They crafted a stick that could be used to activate the sensor and initiate the process. They even knew that there was a 3-second delay built in so they could make sure they safely removed the stick before it got pulled into the machine. But as most of you can probably see coming, that stick wasn't where it usually was one day. So our employee used his hand instead. He relied on that 3-second delay to protect his safety. Only this time the sensor had worked the way it was supposed to and had recognized that the sheet was where it needed to be, and right about the time he reached in was about the time that 3-second delay was up and his hand got pulled into a series of rollers on the machine. Thankfully, he was able to pull his hand out right away, but in the process he sustained a severe laceration to his fingers. When the injury report came back, it had complacency as one of the behavioral causes and root causes of the injury. One of our managers at the time was very vocal about it. Yep, that's right. He was complacent. He put himself in harm's way. Only in my mind, the complacency was not on the employee. It was on us as a business. It was on the manager of the department. It was on the supervisor of the department. We all failed to fix a simple, unsafe condition, and we blame the root cause on employees' behavior. And this is a common complaint of behavior-based safety programs. We didn't fix the underlying issue and yet placed blame on an employee. The behavior was taken because he was simply trying to meet our espoused value of total customer value. Our customers were communicated as our value, and our basic assumptions followed that logic. Our employee put his hand in the machine because he was doing whatever he could to help ensure that his actions were in line with those of the organization and the community. If our espoused values then were what they are now, the employee would have taken a different course of action. Instead of all of our actions being based on the customer, our current state is such that all of our focus, all of our attention, should be placed on ourselves, our individual well-being, as well as those around us. We will deliver our products to our customers. We will deliver world-class products, but not at the expense of our employees. No order is worth that. Before we could move any further, we had to take a step back and focus on our culture. We researched methodology for organizational change and began to look at our safety culture with some of those types of approaches in mind. When you look at models for organizational change, there is an approach introduced by Ken Wilber that discusses 4 quadrants and how they provide a framework that is suitable to virtually any context by individuals and organizations. The integral theory, or integral approach, states that there are 4 quadrants of perspective that must be consulted while trying to fully understand any issue or aspect of reality. They focus on the individual and on the community, as you can see on the y-axis of this diagram, and the interior and exterior perspectives as seen on the x-axis of the diagram. If you take a look in the upper right quadrant, this is the area focusing on the way that the individual expresses themselves externally to the community or to others. What behavior should they show to fit in? What do I need to do to exhibit the norms of this community? The lower right focuses on the external practices of the organization or the community. In this case, the practices that are needed to enhance performance or systems. The inward-facing practices of the organization fall into the lower left-hand quadrant, and this is where the collective has formed their own internal belief structure. For example, what are the organizational values of the business? And lastly, there is the upper left quadrant that is comprised of the internal belief structure of the individual, which may or may not be the same as what they outwardly show in the upper right-hand quadrant. Here we focus on things like, what is my personal motivation? How important is safety to me and why? Again, we have another poll question that popped up. Do you feel that you have management's commitment towards having safety as a core value? I'll give a couple seconds for an answer on this. Okay, hopefully everybody's had enough time. We'll see it about 70-30. We've got about 70% that believe they have management's commitment towards having safety as a core value. So that's great. And the other 30, I think we'll continue to talk a little bit more about how we can help sway that commitment towards that core value. Okay, so we'll take a look again at the same diagram, but this time we've populated it with some of the programs that you guys can all likely relate to, that you're familiar with. In the upper right, we have the outward-facing behaviors of the individual, such as performing certain tasks to get recognition. In the lower right, the outward-facing programs of the organization, which are things like formalized procedures, goals, and metrics. In the lower left, we have the systems and tools that help shape the culture of the organization, those that create the espoused values of the business. These are some of the examples of programs and tools that we utilize within our businesses. First off, the kickoff events. These events they all occur on the first day of work in the new year, where we shut down all of our operations globally to focus on nothing but safety. We do not answer a phone. We do not take a customer order. We do not turn a machine on our first day back to work after the new year until we have spent time focusing on safety. And the majority of our plants spend a full day or more before they go back into full operation. Another program is the creation and signing of our safety pledge. I pledge to personally be involved in creating a safe workplace free of all injuries. My dedication to creating a safe workplace will be absolute and clear through my actions. Safety is my responsibility. Every one of EnPro's 5,800 employees across the globe sign that pledge each and every year. Again, helps to drive that cultural value, that cultural belief within our community. It is these types of programs that help the entire community know what the core values of our culture are. Typical safety programs do not spend much time, if any at all, in the upper left-hand quadrant, working on each and every individual's internal beliefs. And this is the quadrant that has an incredible impact when I am left to make a decision of choosing the safe behavior or the unsafe behavior. So this is an area where we heavily focused when we created our program. We created Safety My Voice, which is a tool to help each individual find their personal voice for safety. Why is safety important to me? What am I willing to accept? What am I unwilling to tolerate? It is this practice that helps establish a true leadership of safety and exhibit the commitment to a safe workplace. This also needs to be communicated to others. People need to know where you stand and why. From a leadership perspective, if people understand your base, why you feel the way you do on safety, they'll be much more willing to listen to what you have to say and really take to heart the message that's coming. If you're just walking down the aisleway, telling people they got to put their PPE on because the rules say so, they're going to receive that one way. If we take the time to truly communicate why we care about that individual, why their safety is important to us, it'll help them realize that we are looking at it from the perspective of truly caring about them, and not simply to write them up or initiate a disciplinary action or put another check on the metrics list. It's about keeping them safe, and if they realize that and recognize that, they're much more likely to follow through with the rules and things down the road, as well as take that culture and share that with the other folks in their area. They're going to adopt that same type of practice through our leaders modeling the way of what we want to see in the workforce. Through refocusing our efforts in the upper left-hand quadrant while continuing to improve in the other areas has helped our organization redefine our culture. We also spend considerable time and energy in the lower left, redefining our organizational values and beliefs, and that led to a culture built upon a strong foundation of management commitment, safety leadership, accountability, employee engagement, and action. Our organizational belief that EnPro has a dual bottom line, that the development of our people is a co-equal goal with the financial performance of the business, helps to clearly communicate our values, and that led to a culture of caring, sharing, and learning. Our community knows that we are valued as individuals, that we are cared for as people, and that we have been empowered to make a choice to be safe and not simply be a victim of circumstance. I just thought I would take a moment and share with you a video that helps communicate some of our culture and value system. This video snippet was taken from one of our safety summits at our operation in Columbia, South Carolina. These employees speaking are frontline operators. As part of our safety summits, we provide access to all levels of our organization, from the CEO to the frontline employee, and these statements that you will hear are in response to questions that our employees receive from the audience.
They are concerned about my well-being. I've worked in facilities with 20 people and with 1,000 people. I've never, ever had that before. That's the kind of mentality and the kind of culture we live in on a daily basis. And I think that's why we're able to do what we do.
Management has to be that supporting role to let you know that, we're going to let you do some unconventional things, but you're going to have my support. And they're going to be a part of it. And once you get to be a part of it, there's no class. It's one common goal to be safe.
At the end of the day, every individual has a responsibility, and we know that, and we're given that responsibility and allowed to use that. And I think keeping it personal is a big deal.
I honestly believe that the people that I work for and work with care about my well-being as well as I care about theirs. Like if I have someone who's known me for 2 years, truly, genuinely care about me enough to send me home with my 7-year-old son healthy, I should have the same respect and the same, feelings for that person to make sure that they're going home to whatever family member or whatever thing outside of those doors they want to go home to the same way.
So you can have good equipment, good programs, but until you establish the mentality of caring in your people, that's the key that makes it work for us. And I think we could grow to 1,000 people, and I believe it'll still be like that. It's embedded now into our facility, and I honestly don't.
Okay, looks like that just wrapped up. I just really thought that some of those folks could speak to the cultural items a little bit better than I could in this, and there was a good opportunity to share that video. Okay, now that we've taken some time to discuss what is needed before implementation of a behavioral-based safety program, now let's discuss some of the common pitfalls and strategies to overcome these pitfalls. To begin with, in order for you to understand where your culture is before implementation and to help track change, it would be recommended to start off with a cultural perception survey or gap analysis. In his book, What is Behavioral Safety?, Dominic Cooper states that there are common pitfalls to any behavior-based safety program. First is the lack of workforce buy-in. The workforce has to be part of the decision-making process, and they must be informed. To spring this program on the workforce without any discussion or input can start the whole process off on the wrong foot. The workforce should be fully aware of the current state of the safety programs and what is leading to incidents within their workplace. They must buy in that behavioral-based safety is needed to begin with. Safety First was designed to spend time researching and analyzing performance trends and root causes. This will help all employees see that it is not simply employee behavior causing accidents, but that behavioral change is part of the overall solution. This module will also enable the workforce to determine what its biggest risk areas are and to customize a program to focus on their specific needs of the business. The second and third mistakes that Cooper discussed are focusing on the wrong accident-causing behaviors through our observations and checklists, and on not properly defining the unsafe behaviors. What people help create, they will help sustain and support. And by focusing on needs specific to their business or their department and allowing them to have a say in what is tracked and focused on, allows each employee to help create safety first for themselves. The last mistake Cooper mentions is including employee names and observations. This tends to make people believe that there will be adverse action taken. However, if the core value of safety is properly established and the culture of caring and sharing is properly established, employees will come to realize that the observations are not for pointing out fault or for discipline, but rather to ensuring your safety because I care about you and do not want you to get hurt. That is all. However, it is recommended that you follow the best practice for your workplace and your culture. If you need anonymous observations, then utilize them. If you can put employee names on them because your culture is more established, then that's okay too. So in summary, before I move on to that slide, I want to leave some time for Q&A because I think that will hopefully help folks out the most on this call. But in summary, to be successful with the implementation of a behavior-based safety program, you have to begin in the right place. Begin with you and developing your ethic. Implement high-quality programs and procedures to make sure your business is safe. Give your employees a voice and channels to have their voices heard. Empower your employees to make a difference and to take action. Next, educate the workforce. Why is behavioral-based safety important to them? Communicate, communicate, communicate. If employees see the value, there will not be resistance. And let them have a say in the program and the area of focus. For us, we decided to create our own program so that we could have all those pieces. One that is customizable and one that allows our colleagues to help create and have a sense of ownership. Lastly, stick to it, make it fresh, make it fun, and do it for the right reasons. Not for the metric, not to make the numbers look good, but to keep everyone safe. If you'd like to learn more specifically about Safety First or our upcoming summit, you can find information about those at our website, www.enprolearning.com. We have a Safety First Train the Trainer event coming up next month just outside of Philadelphia, and we're hosting a summit at our Columbia, South Carolina location again in October. The summit is a 2-day event focused on laying out the entire EnPro safety plan and focuses on development of safety leadership and management commitment. As part of the event, you'll also have the opportunity to tour that facility and sit down with a panel of our operators in a Q&A format similar to what you saw in that short video a little while ago. So with that, I know we've got quite a bit of time left, so I think we can go to some questions and see if I can help answer some.
Great, and if you do have a question that you haven't submitted, please use the Q&A panel. We will be collecting questions until the end of the event. So first question, can you talk a little bit more about how you get management commitment?
Yeah, I'm going to flip back to a slide here, so bear with me for just a moment. If we flip back to this progression chart, first and foremost, oftentimes at our summits, I hear a statement along the lines of, if we had your CEO, we'd be safer. If we had your division presidents, we'd be safer. But I feel that takes some of the accountability, if you will, off of ourselves as individuals and places them in different levels of the organization. Each and every one of us has to recognize that we have the ability to influence up and down. So to begin with, I always suggest that we focus on ourselves on this progression chart. Where do I stand? Once I understand where I'm at and where I want to be, now I can start establishing what am I going to do to help influence those around. We all have the ability to model the way. We obviously, with any of our managers, we can provide coaching, we can provide educational sessions, we can sit down and talk with them. But if we're not in the right place, we're never going to be able to lead them to the right place. So I always suggest starting here. And then having a very frank discussion with them about why they want or why they're not promoting a safe workplace, and really get to the crux of it all. But you need to be in a position where you can have those open and honest conversations with your leadership team in order to help begin that change and drive that management commitment. At the end of the day, I have not yet met a single person that just doesn't care about their employees in the workplace. But if we go back to that conversation or that concept I started a little while ago, that leaders know the right thing to do, but they often don't do it because of their mental models. Sometimes we have to help coach people, help them see that even though they say safety is a value or a priority for them, their actions are not backing up what they are saying. And there might be some outside influences. So spending the time to work through all that is really key to the whole thing. But I have not yet met somebody that comes to work and says, yep, I'm interested in hurting people a day to get product out the door. Maybe I've been really lucky in my career, but I just haven't experienced it yet. So fundamentally, I believe that all leaders of business, they want to do the right thing from safety, but they just don't know how. And as an EHS leader within my business, on the internal side of things, that's one of the areas I've had to focus throughout my career and really spend time developing that internal ethic before we start talking about the tactical things that they can do to lead safety. But once we've got them on board, once that ethic is there, now as a safety professional, I need to make sure that I've provided all the tools, all the resources necessary to enable my leaders to lead the way that we've asked, whether that be through cultural checklists and giving them criteria for how they can help lead the program. There's several different things that you can implement there.
So sort of related to that, my management is at a supporter level based on your levels, but does not see the need to improve in safety. How would you address this issue?
I would have to probably ask a few more questions about your business, to be honest with you, because different things may motivate different people. For example, there are some leaders out there that are number-driven, and if you have a high injury rate, using things like workers' compensation costs and things like that could at least be an avenue to begin the discussion, even though that's not where we want to spend the time when we're up in the visionary level. If we're at the compliance or supporter level, those might be the discussions that we need to initiate to get them engaged. But it really does depend a little bit on your organization, in my opinion. But if I had somebody right now in my business that was a supporter level, I think, honestly, my first approach would be to sit down and have a conversation with them. And usually that conversation will lead to an active, ongoing coaching engagement. We get together, we talk about challenges the leaders faced, how they faced them, how we might do things differently if we had the opportunity to do it again. But again, until we can help that leader find their internal voice for safety through a tool such as Safety My Voice, I don't think you're ever going to get them to become a champion or a visionary leader. They need to understand, they need to develop that ethic within themselves. And everybody, I don't care who you are, everybody has a story as it relates to safety. We all may do it for different reasons. For some of us, we may have experienced a traumatic incident or injury or fatality that has forever shaped our lives. Others of us may have had a parent or a loved one that was hurt in a workplace accident. And some of us might just have a genuine caring for people. Can't explain it, but it's just who you are. You care about people, and that's what drives your actions every day. But you need to tap into that in order to help them progress up that chart. And it takes a lot of guidance and a lot of coaching, and that that needs to be something that you're committed to as a safety leader within your business. Modeling the way for your leaders.
Here's another question. At what point do you get first-line supervisors involved with the process? It makes sense to include them at the beginning stage. Do you agree?
Well, I guess I'm wondering what part of the process. If it's a behavior-based safety program, yes. I mean, again, if your leadership at any level is, if your supervisor at that compliance level, then that's how the program is going to be perceived by your frontline employees, right? Because they have the most interaction with those frontline supervision. So we need to make sure that we have done all of that front-end work with our supervisors, establish the ethic in them, help them model the way for safety and understand what they need to do to be safety leaders within the business. But when it comes specifically to implementing behavior-based safety, I agree that, yes, they should be part of the initial conversations. They're part of the team, right? They're part of the community. And inevitably, they're going to be asked to do certain things, maybe track the observations, maybe post reports. I mean, they're going to need to know what the expectations are of them. And you don't want to dump that on them after you've rolled out the program and you find out that there's some sort of hindrance that gets in the way. Get them together up front, have the conversation as a workforce. We've decided to implement a behavior-based safety program. Here's how it's going to look. Here's how we're going to roll it out. Here's the expectations of you as a frontline supervisor within this business. Do we need to address anything before we move forward with the plan? And have that conversation early on. And then continue to have it throughout the course. Frontline supervision, in my experience, is a very challenging job. You're asked to do a lot of things. It's typically at a pretty fast pace, and it's just not an easy job. And it's really easy for some things to fall by the wayside and for priorities to shift. So having that ongoing relationship with the front-end supervisors, making time to meet with them, whatever your schedule allows, monthly, quarterly, daily if you're a small organization, to help them through the challenges that are facing is essential. You need to have that framework there so that way your supervisors are supported as well in rolling out the program.
Here's another great question. How long does it take to build a safety culture?
Well, again, I think that can change. I threw out this stat here on the slide of this slide, and this is more to behavior-based safety program results, but we'll start there. So usually in the first month, you see a pretty significant decrease. Year 2 to 4 are your best results, and then by year 5, things are starting to die off. Things are getting old. We're not doing all the proactive things and the engaging items, so it tends to actually result in an increase of injuries within the workforce. But when it comes to a culture, I don't know if I have a set time limit on it, but I know it can be done as little as 18 months, 12, 18 months. We had a business that we acquired. The recordable case rate was about a 30. I believe at the time they may have had 100 employees, give or take 20. And within a year and a half, they had that rate down to a 3. Within 4 years, they're below 1. So that culture was something that really started to take shape early on, and then it was the correction of some of the physical hazards and changing the way we did business to continue to eliminate the injury potentials. But each site's a little bit different. I've read studies that suggest if you've tried to roll out a BBS program and failed, that it puts you in a much more significant disadvantage to roll it out again because employees have a negative perception already built up. So you might have to contend with things like that. But, I think in 18 months, 3 years, you should be able to completely revamp a culture. And as long as you're staying on top of it and nurturing it and sustaining it, you can continue that on and continue to strengthen the culture overall as time goes on.
We have 2 related questions here. What part do you think incentives play in the BBS process? And then related to that, how do you find an incentive program that works?
Okay. I'm not a huge fan of incentivizing things like observations in the BBS program because that tends to drive an action to meet the metric instead of driving the action for the right reasons. I have seen businesses that will come out and, if you've done your X number of observations every week or every month, then there's an incentive tied to it. And over a period of time, what you tend to see is that the observations coming in really aren't all that value adding. They're simply coming in to meet that goal or metric or to drive towards that incentive. So I'm not a huge fan of them specifically linked to a behavioral-based safety. Now, on the other hand, if I'm walking down one of our aisleways and I see an employee take a moment of their time to walk over and coach somebody else on how to do something safely, or they're having a discussion regarding a safety procedure or something to that effect, then yeah, I want to reward that. But I'm not going to necessarily do it through a formal incentive program, but we have a program we call our Incredible Awards. We can nominate people for monetary awards. But honestly, in those situations, I tend to do one of two things. Either walk up after the conversation has ended and really thank the person for taking that initiative and that action, or one of the best incentives that I think we've ever done is to have a handwritten thank you card come from one of the presidents of our division that simply says, Dear John Neubauer, I recently witnessed or I recently heard about a time at work recently where you took a few moments out of your day to coach a coworker on how to remain safe at work, and I just wanted to recognize you for going above and beyond. Thank you. And I say that was one of the most effective programs that I've ever implemented, or that we've ever implemented, I should say, because I had an employee. We have some facilities that are unionized. We're up in the Northeast, a pretty strong union, and I had one of our frontline operators come to me, and he said, "Hey, John, did you know that I got a thank you card mailed to my house?" And of course, I knew. I had recommended him for it, and he said, when I received that, he's like, I opened it up. He's like, I actually broke down crying that I got recognition from the president of this company. It's the first time in, 25 or 30 years that this guy had received recognition that way. It didn't cost us anything other than a stamp, which I don't know what those go for now, but it didn't cost us anything more than a stamp and a thank you card. And that had so much of an impact, not only with that specific employee, but he shared it with everybody else around him. And that was really a great program. So I guess a very long-winded way of saying I don't necessarily agree with incentivizing specifics in terms of observation rates or things like that, but we should take the time to celebrate our successes, and we should definitely take the time to recognize when people are performing the correct behaviors in our workplace. If you look at the ABC model of behavioral safety, where you have the anecdote, the behavior, and the consequence, oftentimes behavior-based safety, the consequence at the end tends to be negative. If we see you doing something wrong, we're going to write you up. And that's not a very effective way of implementing the program, because there is absolutely no possible way that you can always be there when somebody decides to make the wrong decision. So unless that negative consequence can be there each and every time that behavior is taken, it's not going to sway the behavior. Whereas a positive reinforcement, a positive consequence, even if we don't see it each and every time we have a positive consequence for behavior that was taken, is a much more impactful way to change the culture and implement the program.
Looks like we have time for just one or two more questions. Just want to make sure we have enough time to cover that last slide. So question, I am familiar with a lot of BBS programs which have not worked. What makes BBS programs different?
What makes BBS programs different, or our specific program different?
BBS programs in general.
Well, there's a wide variety of them out there, so that's kind of a rather challenging question to answer. But the concept of whether you have I don't want to, I guess, be using the jargon of these specific programs, the state to error patterns, whether or not you focus on behaviors or triggers or observations or no observations, you can really, there's a lot of differences out there in all the programs. I think that there are a couple that approach it in a similar format to Safety First, with the formation of a core value of safety coming before the behavioral-based approach, or the people-based safety, if you will. I think one thing that sets us apart is, the customizability of it. We wanted it to be able to work, regardless of the industry we're operating in or the country that we're in or whatever. We wanted it to be something that people could help create for themselves, because we know that's going to help sustain it for longer periods of time. So it's a little bit of a challenge to actually go through each and every one of the differences. But there's some articles out there that specifically compare and contrast some of the programs. I guess I'd encourage you to read those. Each and every program is a little bit different. Cost is obviously something else that factors greatly between program to program and company to company. Follow-up support, tracking ability, whether it be a computer-based tracking or not, what the observation cards look like. So there's a lot of things that vary program to program. But I think really you got to focus on identification of the program that fits your culture the best and your businesses the best, and is one that your employees get to have a say in when they create it.
Great. I think that's all the time we have for questions. John, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I mean, I briefly mentioned these before, but there's just a little bit of a flyer for our upcoming events. We'd love to see you at our Safety First Train-the-Trainer program. You can check out some information on the product on our website, as well as our other products, as well as some other tools that are on there, some videos and things like that you're welcome to use. We'll be meeting outside of the Philadelphia area here for the Safety First Train-the-Trainer event, September 15th and 16th. And then the upcoming summit again down in Columbia, South Carolina. We're coming back to Columbia. We've held these summits in China, throughout the U.S., moving into Europe as well. They've been really successful. And again, we're the only publicly traded company that I'm aware of that opens up all levels of our organization to our customers. You get to come, you get to hear from our CEO, our division presidents, our safety professionals. You get exposed to the entire plan and some of the details and programs that are contained within it. Get to tour one of our facilities, hear directly from our frontline employees, and then the most rewarding part of that for me anyway, and I believe for our customers, is that you get to sit down and have a panel discussion with them, ask them absolutely anything you want, unscripted Q&A, and really hear from our frontline employees what's gotten them engaged, why are they involved, why do they do what they do, and how have we helped cultivate that culture and sustain it. And I think that's been really rewarding. The reason why I say it's important that we're the only publicly traded company is I don't think every quarter our shareholders are asking for our safety results, right? They're looking at financial performance, but yet our CEO could speak for hours on end about safety without a doubt. He's by far a visionary safety leader, a great guy to listen to, and you just don't get to hear that too often from publicly traded companies and have the level of access that we offer. But other than that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining. Hopefully, I've been able to give you some thoughts or some information that was beneficial to you. And by all means, if you have any questions or any questions after this event, feel free to reach out to us through the EnPro Learning website, and I'll be happy to help out however I can. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and a big thanks to each of our attendees. For everyone joining us via audio, please note that at the conclusion of this webcast, you will see an exit survey. In an effort to make each webcast beneficial to you, we would appreciate your input. You will also receive an email following the webcast that will contain a link to the recording and program materials. Safety Daily Advisor and EnPro Learning System would like to thank you again for joining us today. This concludes our program.